Hello! I have a woodland whimsical fairy themed party to go to, so in honor of that, I am going to be making a 3-layered petal skirt. I'll be using 2 different shades of green, one in a chiffon fabric and the other in a satin fabric, to create the layers of my flower skirt. I'll also be adding some gold embroidery to tie this into my full fairy outfit. I have, of course, done separate videos on how I created my duct tape pattern for the top, how I actually made that fairy top, and then the sleeves and the pattern that goes with them as well. I've left the links to those videos in the description bar down below. If you want to see how to create a layered petal skirt to become a bit of a forest fairy, then stick around. The final piece of my fairy outfit puzzle, I'm moving onto my skirt. So this is a very rough draft. I want my skirt to have 3 layers to kind of make it seem like they are leaves, so petals of the leaves. So I've got layer 1, which will be in my darker green satin fabric, layer 2, which is in the lighter chiffon that the sleeves are made out of as well, and layer 3, again in that darker satin green. To create my pattern, I'm starting by cloning an old skirt that I've got. So this is how that skirt sits that I will be tracing out. So you can see it's a little bit flowy, but nothing overly dramatic. So I'll start by tracing out the front of the skirt and then flipping it over and tracing out the back of the skirt. Now that I've traced out my skirt, I'm going to add on my elements. So to start with, I want to add on my band. So for my waist, I want it to be about 70 from the left to the right of what I traced out from that black skirt. It's 36, so I just need to curve it up a tiny bit, or rather curve it in. Make sure it matches. So I divided my skirt in half and then marked up my thirds on either side, which will inform where I trace out my petals for layer 1. And I'm repeating the exact same thing for layer 1 of the back of my skirt. I'm just quickly cutting off my front waistband before I add on my seam allowances to layer 1 on the front of my skirt and the back of my skirt as well. Okay, and I just added my seam allowances to my front skirt layer 1. I'll cut this out and then repeat the same on my layer 1 for the back of my skirt. Now that I have my layer 1 for the front of my skirt and the layer 1 for the back of my skirt cut out, I'm going to use those cutouts, trace around them, and that will inform the pattern of my layer 2s. So for my third and final top layer, I'm laying out layers 1 and 2 on top of each other. I'll trace that out and then create the styling for my third layer. Alright, and that is my skirt pattern all created. I've got the front 4 pieces all separate to show you here, and then the back 4 pieces stacked on top of each other as I'll sew them so you can see what it should look like. Next, I'll get all my pieces traced out onto my fabric, starting with the satin green fabric. I'm just adding some interfacing to a section of fabric before I trace out and cut out my waistband pieces. Okay, and those are all the pieces of fabric for my skirt cut out. Time to stitch up my skirt. So my plan is I'll take the 3 back pieces and I want to combine them so that they're effectively one piece of fabric, and then I'll do the same with the 3 front pieces. So I'll start by marking out on either side of each of the 3 pieces of fabric where they overlap, so where they'll be within the left and the right seam allowances. Then I'll take the remaining sections, so the little dangly pieces on each piece, and I will fold them over by 1 centimeter, pin and press, fold them over by 2 centimeter, pin and press, as they have 2 centimeter seam allowances, and then I will stitch up. After that, I'll layer each of the pieces on top of each other as they are now, and I'll stitch my 2 centimeter seam allowance across the top. Then I will pin up along the sides where they overlap and stitch my 2 centimeter seam allowances on the left and the right sides. That will mean that my 3 pieces are effectively combined in the way they should be and will form one big piece. So to start with, I have my layer 3 of my back piece. All right, I've just marked up my left side where the join is and my right side. I'm just double checking that they're both 33 from the top on both sides, which I've adjusted the pins to make sure they are, so that when they're sewn in on both sides, they're even. Next, I'm gonna cut some slits, so in accordance with my pattern below, so that I can do my seam allowances. Otherwise it just ends up that it's kind of folded over really weirdly and isn't the 2 centimeter seam allowance in this section here. Now I'm folding over by 1 centimeter, pinning and pressing, and then I will fold over by another centimeter and pin and press. At each of my points, I'm just continuing to fold over by 1 centimeter on one edge, and then taking the other and going straight over and doing that 1 centimeter. Now at each point, I've folded over my 2 centimeters on one side. I'm just flipping that over and trimming the excess fabric. And now I will fold it over again and trim any other excess fabric that I have. All right, and that is layer 1 done. I'll be repeating the exact same process across the other 2 layers. With my layer 1, so the biggest piece on the front of the skirt and the back of the skirt, and also the base piece, it will be joined to the opposite side, so the front piece on each of the sides. So all I'm doing for this one is doing my 2 centimeter folds and pinning, pressing and sewing on this section of the points here. And those are my 3 layers of the skirt with the points all hemmed. Next, I am going to join up along the top edge and then the sections here where the layers overlap. So I just pinned up along my left side. For this point here, I just marked on my fabric below where these layers won't be all sewn together. So then I'm just going to gradually kind of join that line with the seam. And then I just repeated the same pinning up and stitching process on the right hand side. I'm just adding a little bit of glue between the layers just to roughly keep them together so it's easier when I'm putting on the waistband, putting on the zipper, and then also joining up that final seam. It's time to attach my waistband, so I'm starting by folding it exactly in half and then pressing. Now I'm pinning up my band right side to right side along that 2 centimeter seam allowance, the same one that I already stitched to stitch my pieces of fabric together. Now I'm going to be adding in my zipper, so I'm starting by adding some interfacing on both the front and the back of the skirt where the zipper will sit. I'm onto attaching my zipper, so I've pinned it right side to right side, just along the edge of my seam allowance. And that is my zipper in, and the rest of that hem all closed up. Now I need to close up my skirt, so I will be doing right side to right side and sewing up along that 2 centimeter seam allowance. Okay, and that is my skirt all done. For one final touch, I'm gonna add a little bit more of that gold embroidery just to make sure it links to my fairy top. And just like that, she says, after 3 solid weeks of work, my fairy midsummer outfit is all completed. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.